There we go. Thank you guys all for tuning in to our International Women in Pharma talk. We've all been super excited to have this conversation all month long. We're going to close it out right with having three amazing women in pharma kind of share their experiences. But before we get to that, just kind of want to talk to you guys about what we're going to talk about today. It's been a while since we've all really interacted and engaged together. So we're going to do a little Pharma Collective catch up, just kind of speak a little bit about what's going on and what's coming up. Then we're going to get to the good stuff and have our speaker introductions, let them kind of share who they are and where they're coming from. And then our Q&A panel, we've kind of planned some questions that we're going to go ahead and ask. We think that will kind of spark the conversation, and then open it up to allow our audience to engage what we love so much. So, alrighty, let's get it going. All right, y'all, it's the 2021-2022 school year is almost coming to a close, and I'm still honestly shook. I cannot believe that we're almost done with our P3 year. Everyone, please tell me how you guys feel. April is starting tomorrow, and I don't know how to respond, how to react to that. But what we do want to say is thank you guys so much for kind of joining our collective and being a part of our journey for this first academic school year. We've learned so much about what you guys need from us. We've learned how to appropriately share our experiences to where we can all gain something from the content that we put out. So we're so grateful for you guys for being a part of the collective. And that kind of transitions us to my next point. So we're all P3s, the co-founders, and we're going to be going into our P4 year next year, meaning we're starting our APPEs, our advanced pharmaceutical pharmacy education practice. And yeah, honestly, I'm super excited, super nervous. But what's really great is that we all actually have pharmaceutical industry APPEs coming up as well. And we think that since we've already been kind of sharing our experiences throughout our journey through our first, second, third year, this would be a great time for us to really kind of share with you our experiences live when we're actually in those opportunities. So I know we have a mixture of FDA, BMS, a whole bunch of different other organizations and companies that will be directly in. So I'm super excited to announce that we'll be sharing with you that live on Instagram. So if you don't follow us on our socials, I would go ahead and take that as opportunity to follow us at the Pharmaco, which is on the bottom right corner, and then our LinkedIn is on the bottom left corner. So go ahead, add us, follow us, stay up to date. If you have questions about our journeys, this will be a great time to ask. We'll talk about how we even got these opportunities and what we're really learning as we go on throughout these opportunities. So super excited for that. And like I said, now we can get to the good stuff for our talk today and transition on to Tati.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Milka. So again, my name is Tatiana Hines. I'm really excited. I'm 1/4 of the Pharma Collective, and I am completely honored to be able to introduce our three lovely and amazing, powerful women in pharma today. So I'm just going to first give their name, their job title, and the company they represent. And then our first question, which is going to be asked, I believe, by Matt, will be able to go into a little bit more about their career journeys and exactly what they do in pharma. So first, we have Dr. Kimberly Brown, and she's the head of infectious diseases at Janssen Pharmaceuticals. And then we have Dr. Lily Ernest, who is in the commercial rotation development program at Genentech in California. And then Dr. Marsha Walkup, who is the lead MSL in GI at Takeda Pharmaceutical Company. And then I'll pass it over to Matt. Oh.
No problem. Slight technical difficulty, but thank you, Tati. I appreciate that. Jumping right in, you can go ahead and go to that next slide as well. Thank you. Perfect. So just so we can kind of get an idea of who you all are, we just wanted to ask if you all can briefly share a bit of y'all's career journeys and your career and what your current roles are.
Do you want us to just jump in?
And we can kind of go in the order. I mean, because we kind of lined up our last name. So,
let's do that.
So Kim, if you wanted to jump in first.
Sure. So hi, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Kim Brown. I received my Doctor of Pharmacy at the great University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, so go Tar Heels this weekend. I did a pharmacy practice residency and an ID specialty residency as well. And then I jumped into clinical practice and was there for only a short period of time working in an HIV clinic in the North Port of Florida in Jacksonville, Florida. From there, I was doing a lot of talks within the state as I was really focused on HIV and specifically resistance. And at that time, I won't tell you how old I am, but at that time, resistance was a really big deal. Patients were failing multiple regimens and dying right and left. So being sort of an expert in that space and really evaluating genotypes and phenotypes for those patients, I was called on a lot to give presentations to various different physicians and pharmacists about it. So then I jumped into the dark side and went into pharm as a medical science liaison at what was then called Tebotech Therapeutics, which was then acquired by Johnson & Johnson or Janssen. And from there, I took on roles of increasing responsibility, including trainer. Then I became associate medical director and led our hepatitis C franchise at that time when DAAs first became available. And then I went back into HIV and became the US medical director for our HIV franchise. And following that, I went into R&D as a scientific director and led our large phase 3 clinical program for the HIV product that we primarily sell now, as well as some other phase 1 studies. But then I wanted people leadership, so came back into medical affairs and led our 2 MSL teams. So we have a vaccines MSL team as well as a general ID MSL team. And then we also have a community liaison team, which was a great experience. And then most recently, I was promoted to head of medical affairs for the IDV space as well. So I'll pass it on to Lily.
Wow, super impressive professional journey. So hard to follow on the coattails of that, but I'll do my best. So interesting, I guess I can provide the perspective of someone going into the commercial side of pharma, but I'll back up and first talk about how I ended up here in the first place, how I considered the pharma industry as a potential career opportunity. So I am from the Bay Area. I went to college, undergrad at UCSD in San Diego, and then I went to pharmacy school and business school. I did a dual PharmD MBA program at USC in LA. So California girl through and through, went along the coast. And during my first year of pharmacy school, I had decided to apply for the MBA program, mainly because I thought down the line it would prove useful. At the time, I was really set on becoming a clinical pharmacist and doing residency and going that route. And then I applied for the dual MBA program, got in. It's interesting the way our program's structured is the second year you do the business school year and then you come back and finish pharmacy. So did my MBA year, second year, fell in love with it. Did not expect that, loved especially in marketing, and was looking for opportunities to now combine the 2 degrees in a way that I could really pivot and do more of a business oriented focused career, but still use my pharmacy background as my foundational knowledge. So I started looking for opportunities in pharma, did an internship at Amgen in clinical development to kind of get my foot in the door more on the R&D side. But knowing that marketing was my end goal, I started kind of building my expertise in pharma there, and then applied for an internship with Genentech in marketing, from which I applied for a full-time role in the CRDP program, which I'm in currently. And the CRDP program, or the Genentech Commercial Rotational Program, is a 3-year program where you essentially do 3 different rotations and get breadth of experience in the commercial sector of pharma, with the end goal of becoming a marketer and kind of growing as a marketing leader in the organization. I'll pause there and I will pass it to Marsha.
Great, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marcia Walkup, the Senior Director leading the gastroenterology field team at Takeda Pharmaceuticals. So my team consists of medical science liaisons and field medical educators. I have MSL supporting inflammatory bowel disease, short bowel syndrome. We have a product for celiac disease, which is a stem cell product, as well as our pipeline products. So the primary function of my team is to establish and maintain those peer-to-peer relationships with the leading physicians at major institutions, academic institutions, and clinics. They work, throughout the product's life cycle, helping to ensure that the products are utilized effectively. They serve as scientific peers and resources throughout the medical community, and they also act as scientific experts for our internal partners at Takeda. I also serve as the medical pillar lead for Takeda's DE&I Council, and our goal at the council is to make Takeda the leader in the healthcare disparities space. So we're addressing minority representation at Takeda. We're partnering with our HBCUs to advance STEM, hosting minority interns in medical affairs, which is where I met Matt, and working with our clinical operations to enhance diversity in our clinical trials. So my background is chemistry. I have a BS from the George Washington University and a master's and a PhD in analytical chemistry from Howard University, the Mecca. I am a Washingtonian. My career post-PhD completion actually started as a research scientist, and I had the responsibility of making the herbicide Roundup cheap and reducing its safety risk. And that wasn't possible for the Monsanto company. So that sort of morphed into a senior competitive intelligence chemist. And in that role, I was analyzing generic compounds from all over the world for infringement. And my findings were used to support, infringement claims. I actually interacted all day, every day with the company's legal and regulatory teams, and even presented my data in court. So it was at that point in my career, guys, that I realized that I wanted to utilize my degree more non-traditionally outside of the laboratory. So I transitioned to regulatory affairs and then to the pharmaceutical sector in medical affairs. And I've been in medical affairs since joining Pharma. I started at Abbott and I went to Shire, which was acquired by Takeda. And I've been with the combined organization over 14 years. And I'll pause here. Matt?
Thank y'all so much. I really appreciate y'all kind of sharing your journeys a bit. I'm going to pass it over to Joe and we can slide over to that next one. Thank you, Milton.
Right. Like Matt said, we definitely thank you for sharing your journeys and your current roles. But we can move on to the next question, please. So this is a very lengthy question. So according to the World Economic Forum, women in pharmaceuticals make up under 30% of executive directors in the C-suite. What barriers that hinder women from achieving higher level positions, and how do we address these barriers? So we could start with Dr. Walkup and then, go back down the line.
So we're going to reverse it up this time. That's cool. So where do I begin? There's so many. I would say that the common responsibility of balancing a career and domestic responsibilities, managing a household, raising children, taking care of elderly parents can often present, many challenges and barriers for women. So we're just likely to face those challenges of domestic responsibilities and career sacrifices. So for me, if I could, I would target institutions with exceptional employee benefits, paid bonding leave, maternity and paternity leave. I think it's also important to have open dialogue with your leadership, be proactive about networking, execute always on your requirements, and ask for and execute on your stretch assignments. So those are a few things that I think can minimize barriers with this example. So the second common barrier to success, in my opinion, is the lack of exposure. We often don't get the experiences, challenging high profile assignments and visibility. And I think they're all critical to success. So I think it's not only important to have mentors, but you have to have sponsors that advocate for you in the executive circles. So my sponsors have positioned me, with stretch assignments. They provided me with opportunities and development and support. paved the way for me and championed for promotions and success. So those are two of the barriers that I have run across constantly in my career, and I'll stop there.
Totally agree, Marcia, on the sponsorship comment, because I feel like everybody can always say, you know, have network, get your mentors, have that mentorship component, but unless, and this was taught to me by a really great manager and mentor, she taught me when I was still an intern trying to get a full-time job at Genentech. And I'll get into answering this question, but I just wanted to like share some tidbits that was helpful for me. She just gave me simple messaging for how to ask senior leadership advocacy for you. And it's as simple as, you know, setting up a one-on-one or asking your manager to connect you with a senior leader and have an initial just introductory call, get to know them. And then as you build that relationship, as you're asking for, you know, you're transitioning into a different role, or you're looking to get an internship, or you're looking to get a job, directly asking them, are you able to advocate for me for this role? And most of the time, I would say majority, if not all the time, they would be more than happy to. And I think the problem with the barriers that are hindering women from achieving high-level positions is that they don't know that they can do that, or we're not comfortable asking that. And I think with boys, or with men in pharma, they've kind of been passed that down in like the boys club, what we call, like, you know, that sense of camaraderie where, you know, the leaders are reaching down and doing that proactively. But for women, I think we are so used to just like doing things on our own and expecting others to kind of see that effort for themselves without directly asking. And so I think the way that we address it is have those conversations with your manager and be open about, you know, what can I do to, you know, get that advocacy and get leadership support in order to move up in the organization, or if that's your goal. But I think generating that advocacy and continuing to have those proactive conversations and being confident in them, because no one is going to move you up because they think that you want that. You have to really ask for it.
Yeah, and I'll just add just a few brief things, but I totally agree with what both presenters mentioned. It was a change in mindset for me. You know, I saw myself as this girl that came from South Carolina. How did she end up at J&J in these types of roles? And it was really a mindset shift where I had to say, why not me? Especially working in large groups that are primarily male. The visibility part, I 150% agree with. And I would take it even a bit further. Yes, you need to have your mentor, you need to have your sponsor, but you also need to be comfortable self-promoting, which is something that I don't think that women traditionally feel comfortable with. And it's not that you have to go out and toot your own horn about I did this and I did that, but it's in the how that you're doing it. And really talking about what you're doing and the impact that you're actually having with what you're doing. The other thing that I would say is raise your hand for opportunities. Each one of the roles that I've gotten, it's because I raised my hand and said, hey, do you need help with something? Or do you have any stretch assignments that I can potentially help with? Which then gave me the visibility into other groups. It allowed me to network naturally without feeling like, ooh, you know, I'm going after someone because of who they are, who they might know, or their position. So it just made it a lot more comfortable for me. And it also broadened my skill set a lot more and gave me a lot more visibility sort of in a natural way, rather than solely depending on a mentor or a sponsor to do that for me. But I totally agree with what the other two panelists mentioned before, but always remember, why not me?
That's amazing. Thank you so much for all of those gems and all of that advice. As a woman, I'm really inspired already so far. We're only on question number 2. So Marcia, I also had a question. Since you brought up the sponsor versus the mentor, do you mind going into a little more as to what a mentor is versus a sponsor? And I can also read in the chat. So thank you, Lily. So Lily said a mentor is someone who advises, while a sponsor is someone usually in a senior leadership position who will fight for you and advocate for you.
Yes. That is exactly right. And I'll just, I'll just speak to my sponsor. I was in a role, it was a hybrid medical director role, and I was responsible for, developing the medical strategy, for writing the justification for the field team, for making sure everything was in place. And then when the time came, when we were in phase 3, about ready to execute the MSLs, I was able to lead the team. But, ophthalmics wasn't an expertise for my company. So they started to hire, a bunch of people from different organizations, and I could just see the culture changing. So I would speak with my sponsor all the time about what I was doing, some of the things that I was seeing, some of the things that I wasn't comfortable with, some of the compliant things that were about to happen that weren't good, non-compliant things are about to happen. I just kept talking to him about it, talking to him about how I wanted to get back more into strategy, how I wanted to get more back into a high profile product and what I wanted to do with it. And this was just an ongoing conversation. And I kid you not, 6 months later, I got a phone call and it was like, Marcia, do you want to lead the GI field team for Entyvio? Absolutely. For Takeda. That's just how it happened. And I have many examples of that throughout my career. So it's the sponsors are those executive leaders who are in the room when they're talking about, what divisions look like, what company is going to be, they're going to purchase and things like that. Those are the individuals that need to know your capabilities and what you want. And those are the people who advocate for you.
Thank you for that. And we can go to question 3. I'm going to pass it off to Milka and she'll ask the question.
Thank you. Thank you. Going on to question number 3, as she said, what are some helpful strategies to navigate microaggressions against women in the workplace? I feel like we all kind of hear how women can be disregarded in the workplace. And even as a student, I know I've definitely experienced this. So just kind of wanting to know what are some helpful strategies to kind of navigate situations like that.
Lee, do you want to go first this time?
Sure. Yeah, I think it really depends on your comfort level of how you want to address it in your personal situations. I feel like if you have a great relationship with your manager, it's something that you could bring up to your manager. It's something that if you notice it happen in a group setting, usually like pulling the individual aside and having a conversation of, hey, I noticed that you made a comment that, could be considered not inclusive with everybody that's in the room. And I just wanted to make you aware of it. It's kind of like, however you're comfortable, if you feel that you're not in an inclusive workplace or you're in a workplace where it's heavily male dominated and you don't have your share of voice, I feel like what's worked for me is just bringing that up to your manager, bringing it up to, and one easy fix is like, for example, if you're in a room and it's primarily male dominated and most men are the only ones vocalizing their opinions and speaking out, and you don't feel as comfortable speaking out, one way that, and since we're in a virtual setting, that's helped is asking a question of the room. Let's say you're leading the conversation, asking a question and then asking people to pause and think and put their responses in the chat, or if people are going off of mute and sharing their responses, to pause and moderate and say, all right, anybody who hasn't come off mute want to put their thoughts in the chat. Or I guess I'm just thinking about it more so from like, if I am moderating a discussion or leading a group or leading a discussion, it's helpful to acknowledge and to give that space in the room. But if I'm in the room and I feel like I don't have the space, then that would be an opportunity to bring it up and vocalize it to either your peers, if you're more comfortable with your peers and just having that open dialogue. Or I would say, like, if you want to really move the needle, is to have that question or have that conversation with your manager. And there are some systemic ways that you can really change that conversation. You just have to be vocal about it with the people that you trust and people that you're open with. So I would start there, I guess, like having that mindset both ways of if you are leading a discussion, thinking about including everybody in the room, if you are part of that room, being cognizant of where you feel left out and vocalizing that to the people you trust. I guess I'll pass it to Kimberly.
I totally agree with that. I was thinking of some situations that have happened recently, and I'm at a place where I feel comfortable calling it out when it actually occurs, but doing it in a gentle manner so that way people don't feel threatened, or that will then move on with other types of labels, if you will. But I definitely think acknowledging it when it occurs and having people understand how it makes you feel in that moment is super, super important to helping to sort of change the culture, if you will. And totally agree with, getting allies involved, whether it be your manager or another person that might be in the room. Like one instance I had recently in a meeting, there's one particular gentleman that just will not look at me. He will only speak to the men in the room because I'm the only female on the team. And so, I'm looking around and people are looking and they noticed it. And so we had a conversation after about why we think that happened and what we could actually do about it in the beginning. So we then switched our seating chart, if you will, as to where we were placed. And someone actually just spoke to him on the side and said, why are you doing this? This is giving this type of perception. So I really do believe in what Lily mentioned about trusting another individual, talking to them about it, because they can also be an ally to help rectify either the situation or prevent it from happening again.
Wow, those are both really good. That's a tough question because you don't really know if it was accidental or on purpose. So, to me, regardless, it sort of undermines, cultural inclusion. So I either let it go, I respond immediately, or maybe later. For me, it just sort of depends upon the issue and the relationship that I have or that I want to have with that person, how I feel and how I want to be perceived. Like you sort of mentioned that, Kim. If it's someone that I care about, I typically will confront the microaggression by pulling them up, it's just kind of informing them that the conversation might get uncomfortable for them, but let them know that what they said or did was uncomfortable for me. And this isn't always easy for them, but I think you'll better understand the why and they'll understand, maybe not to do that again. So sometimes I've even just asked for clarification at the moment, just to better understand the intent. So I think this gives the person the opportunity to further think about what they said. And it gets me, again, the opportunity to better understand the intent. And sometimes I'll just let it go because I might just come off too angry and I don't want to be labeled. So it's tough. It's something I've dealt with all my life. And that's just how I deal with it. And I have spoken to my mentors and my leadership about certain things that bother me that I know I can't respond to appropriately, and they have assisted me in the past.
Thank you guys so much for all sharing. I do have like a quick follow-up question, if you don't mind, after that comment. How are women able to express ourselves without coming off as emotional or, kind of portrayed as weaker for having those emotions or being upset? I don't know if you guys could like kind of navigate that a little bit. I'm so sorry to get off track.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to remain calm, and sometimes you do have to delay having that conversation just depending on what's said. I guess I was thinking about some of my previous experiences. But remaining calm and really being sort of factual and data driven. You can talk about how it makes you feel as well, as I mentioned before, but just saying, sort of these are the facts, this is kind of what happened. And whether there's data behind it, like if we're getting into a data type of conversation, I always try to bring data into it. So that way you're formulating the discussion in more of a direct fact-based manner versus from an emotional standpoint. But we're human, and I think you know, for a lot of women, especially women that I see that are in senior leadership, I was often challenged with, you know, do I really want to continue climbing the corporate ladder? Because it almost appeared as though they sort of lost a sense of self or authenticity to a certain degree. And that was something that I really did not want to lose. And so I've really leaned into being my authentic self, all parts of me. So you're going to get the neck roll and everything else, depending on who the audience is. But it was really, really important for me to just be who I am and, you know, say that I have a different perspective and a different opinion. And typically it's worked out pretty fine for me. So.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, I was struggling to get off of mute. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm definitely going to take that advice personally. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Tati to our next question.
Thanks, Milka. Okay, so our fourth question is, how can individuals who don't identify themselves as a woman become allies who advocate for equality? And we can start with Marcia.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. This was a tough question for me. And I take it back to, you know, sort of like some of the barriers. And, you know, like I would, you know, show their potential by, you know, putting them in stretch assignments with high visibility, you know, showing that they can do the work, that they have the capabilities and the competencies to do it, making sure that they have those opportunities for development and support, putting them in various groups and things like that, you know, pave the way by introducing them to strategic personnel. And then again, being a champion for them, for their promotions and their recognition. I think those things on a regular basis would help to advocate for equality.
I can chime in. I feel like I think that's a great answer for leadership allies who don't identify as women, supporting those below. And I also feel like for allies that are your peers, let's say you work and you're thinking about, like, let's say I'm a male and I want to support my women peers around me. I feel like a easy way to advocate for equality is just, if you notice that there's not women representation, if the women on your team are not getting selected for getting promoted or getting asked to share their opinion, it could be just as small as, you know, you're in a meeting and there's one woman in the room and you're a male and there's three other males in the room, is just being aware of that. And I feel like, you know, it's easier said than done. You know, it's like, sure, I mean, that's basically mindfulness at its core, like just being aware of your surroundings and seeing like, hey, if somebody is not speaking up as much, giving them that space. I guess it's just building on my answer to the previous question, but just having that awareness and really fighting for your peers if you feel like something isn't fair or something you've noticed something that's not fair, and just vocalizing that, because it's going to be so much more powerful for somebody to hear that from you versus somebody to hear that from the woman who's impacted. Because, you know, to the question beforehand, it's hard, you know, it's hard to phrase it in a way where it's like, hey, I've noticed these things. Let me push for change. Let me voice how I'm feeling. But if somebody, your peer, your ally, can also voice that, then it's, you know, magnified. So I think just having that awareness and really noticing when something isn't fair and speaking up.
And that can be done, I think, in different ways. So like Lily mentioned earlier, hey, Kim, what do you think? You know, or we spoke earlier and I know you have a difference of opinion, or sometimes when there's group project work, sometimes I see that men will sort of take the onus for the delivery, if you will, but saying, you know, Kim and I worked on this together, and Kim, you know, worked on X part of this particular project versus Y. The other part that I wanted to bring up is something that Marsha mentioned earlier is, you know, if women happen to need to leave early because of childcare or things of that nature, that's not necessarily reflective of lack of caring or lack of responsibility, but it's, you know, that we're taking care of multiple things and have multiple responsibilities, not just at work, and just remaining flexible with that particular individual. Because I do find and overhear comments that are made oftentimes with women either needing to leave early or childcare issues or things of that nature. And it really isn't reflective in the quality of work that they do or how hard they're working at all.
Thank you, ladies, for that. I actually do have another question, if you all have anything else to add to it. So how can we as women be allies for ourselves as well and for our colleagues, helping for the advancement of women? And I guess just to add another layer to that, for women that are of diverse populations or minority women, how can we empower our own? And anyone can hop in.
For me,
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Marsha.
I'll say for me, it's been the sponsorship piece, just sponsoring other individuals and really pushing people out of their comfort zone. I find sometimes too, as women, we're uncomfortable being uncomfortable, but I think that that's when you find the most growth. And so I will push people to death and they're like, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, you're going to do it. So just do it. We'll walk through it together. You know, I'm going to be right there to support you, but this is something that I see that will benefit you, and here is why. And then usually once people start to see and the light bulbs start clicking and wheels start churning, then they're all in. And the other thing that I would say is make sure that you are pulling someone else up with you. So never forget, once you get to a place in leadership or in a certain role that, you know, you've done it on your own, make sure that you're always reaching back to either mentor or sponsor other individuals. I mean, Tatiana knows I talk to multiple people at UNC right now, just for that reason. So just always make sure that you're reaching back to help others as well.
I love that. I was gonna say almost the same thing to the latter half that you mentioned of, you know, pulling someone up with you and remembering to offer that mentorship for people who are in your shoes where you used to be. Because I feel like we can all remember how we felt when we didn't know anybody or didn't know where to start or didn't have any support, and having someone there to show you the ropes. I think one thing that I found to be really effective when, you know, I'm still a young professional. I wouldn't say that I've like gone through industry and I'm so full of like knowledge, but I think one thing that I've found to be really effective of helping other women feel empowered and inspired to go into pharma and explore leadership opportunities is just being really relatable and really connecting on a genuine level. I feel like sometimes we want to hold this image of like, we know what we're doing and we don't want anybody to call us out on that. And I feel like with women, the more that you can relate on a fundamental level with anybody who is like, you know, years younger, years older, I feel like that is where you form that bond and you form that support versus trying to show face and be like, yes, I can be your mentor, or yes, I can support you, but like really having that relationship built.
Yeah, all of that, ladies. You know, mentoring, sponsoring, you know, I think it's important that, you know, you're always prepared and thinking about what your next step is, because you never know when you're going to have that opportunity to be bold, you know, go and talk about what you want. And so be prepared. I spend a lot of time with people starting with the organization. I connect people within and outside of the organization. I give people feedback. And I think, those are the things that were done for me, not originally when I started in my career, but as I started to move up in my career, when I switched to pharmaceuticals, I recognized the importance of that. And that's how I've been able to be successful. And I give that back. I'm always giving back. I'm always making opportunities for others, and putting people where they need to be and around people that they need to be around.
Thank you so much. We can go to the next slide, and I'm going to pass it off to Matt.
Perfect. And before I even get started, when we came up with the idea for this meeting, I had a feeling it was going to be just a powerful meeting. But I mean, this is so important to hear, even coming as as a man, because it's things that we don't even really, some things that we can't really relate to. So I thank y'all so much for sharing y'all experiences. Before pass it over to Joe to check in with their questions, we did have just one more for the ladies tonight, and it's kind of a branding question. So in your own words, please complete the sentence. I am a woman in pharma who, and we can start it back with Kim.
I would say highly strategic, an innovator, and a people developer.
And Lily?
I am a woman in pharma who wants to empower and inspire other young women, young professionals to be leaders.
Yeah, so I'm a woman in pharma who's faced many challenges, worked hard to validate myself, benefited from every opportunity possible, and is committed to supporting the inclusion of diverse professionals to enhance the overall culture at Takeda. And I'm a visionary leader.
Yes. Absolutely.
Killed it.
Absolutely. Thank y'all so much. I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to Joe. We can slide to the next slide.
Thank you. Just once again, I want to thank all three of you for coming out this evening and giving very powerful speeches on your position in pharma, how it affects you as a woman, everything like that. For anybody in the audience, now is the time. If you have any questions, if you want to make any statements, now is the time to do it. And even if you're afraid to make a statement or a question, you can always drop it in the chat and we can read it for you. So don't be afraid to come off of mute, show your face, ask a question.
We don't bite, I promise. Any question is on the table. As you can tell, we're all real on this panel, so we are happy to be open books for you all.
Okay, so we have our first question. Jody, do you want to come off of mute or?
Okay, I can read my question. So I asked that, so I've gone about seeking mentorship, and I know that you can't have enough mentors, but as a pharmacy student, how would you say you can go about seeking sponsorship? I think, do you have to be super strategic about it? And if you see yourself in that position in the future, or should you just genuinely be just seeking sponsorship in general?
So I think it's important, when you start a new organization and you schedule some time with your leaders, talk to them about who you are, about what are the things that you want to do, and then get into your role, validate yourself in your role, think about where you want to be, and then you'll begin to see who the leaders are and who could help you. But having those conversations with people within your organization at the senior level or above, that's important. And I think that's one way to start seeking a sponsorship. Also, talk to your peers. Your peers know people, your friends know people. They're in different organizations. There's pharmacy, there's academia. So there's a multitude of ways to go about getting a sponsorship.
I will also add in, I think, Jody, you're also asking what can you do as a pharmacy student, right? So honestly, I wouldn't worry about it as a pharmacy student. I think the only place that I could see you really finding a good sponsor, because that's tough to do as a student, unless let's say you do an internship over the summer. Because I can give you my example. for me, where I got a great sponsor was actually when I did an internship at Genentech in marketing. And the way that I ended up having her as a sponsor or landing her as a sponsor is my manager really helped. So my manager slash mentor, I kind of think of them as your like pillar, your rock or your connector to identifying who would be a good sponsor, and have them really take the lead on, let me connect you with VP of sales over here and form that connection versus like you just kind of stone cold reaching out to an SVP of the company. You know, it can be really intimidating, but for me, she connected me with the senior leader. And as a senior leader, they love talking with interns. They love talking with students and mentoring and sharing their advice. So I don't think you'll have any problem setting up that time, just working with your manager on kind of getting that advice on how to do that. But that's how I did it. But I would say, kind of tough to do when you're just a student in school reaching out to a, senior leader at a pharma company. I would say where it really comes in handy, where it really moves the needle is once you land, like in an APPE rotation, for example, or an internship, for example. I think that's where you can start to explore that.
Yeah, Lily, that's great. That's a great point. We had interns this summer, and one of the things that we did was we had sessions for them to meet with all of the senior leaders just to get them comfortable with having conversations with them and talking to them and just seeing who they are and hearing about their journey. I think that was really important for the interns, and that too can help you, like you mentioned.
And the last thing that I'll add to that is keep in touch with them. Don't let it be one and done.
Right.
We had one person that would send us quarterly emails updating us on what she was doing, how her rotations were going, what she did after rotations. Made a huge difference. Everyone knew who she was when she applied. And we knew exactly what had been going on with her. So just don't let it be a one and done type of conversation. You don't have to email them every month, but once a quarter, twice a year, it definitely makes a difference.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for that great question, Jody. So I see in the chat we have Jude asking a question. Jude, do you want to come off of mute, or I can ask a question for you?
Oh, hey guys. Yeah, I was just asking, I guess, for more advice on obtaining an internship, I guess a fellowship after pharmacy school. Because I know for the clinical route, you're going more, residency, match day. I guess what's the difference in residency and fellowship? I don't know if you guys already addressed that, and how do you guys go about that?
Kimberly, Marsha, I don't know, you guys didn't explore fellowship, right? I couldn't speak to
I can speak to it though.
Yeah.
But if you've done, go for it.
No, I have, but you want to go first and then I can add in my perspective.
Yeah, so a residency can be, I guess, one of two things. It can be very, very similar to like your fourth year of rotations where you're rotating through different experiences, like if it's a pharmacy practice. And then when you get to your second year, your PY2 year, it is going to be more designed and more focused on the specific area in which you're trying to go into, whether it's critical care, ID, things of that nature. So you will have, some expanded experiences, but it really will be focused and tailored to the one thing that you're thinking about going into. Fellowships are typically 2 years in nature. 1 year is focused on some rotations, but it's more focused on research because it's giving you the time to actually complete your research project, which generally takes about a year. And then the other portion of that is either focused on like hospital work or serving as a semi-professor, if you will, in academia. Those are the way that I've seen them done. But if you're thinking specifically around pharma-related fellowships, there are a few that are out there where you're basically rotating through various different departments within the pharmaceutical industry, whether that may be regulatory, medical affairs, consumer, med info. There's just various different opportunities that one can go into with a pharma specific industry or fellowship as well.
And great summary. I think that the one thing I would add, I didn't apply for fellowship, but I considered it as an option. I had a lot of friends that applied for industry fellowships. I think if your question is any advice, right? Hold on. Any advice? I would say do your research on what exactly you want to do in industry. Like have that, be able to verbalize that and have that vocabulary of you've already done your background research on what's interesting to you. Like why do you want to be an MSL, for example? Like really understanding that role. And the way you do that is by talking to people who are currently in that role, like reaching out to them through LinkedIn or reaching out to your friends who have gone into industry and you getting their sense of what does that day-to-day look like, just being really thoughtful about like, okay, you have a really great picture of what it is you're getting yourself into, and then really know how to differentiate yourself. I feel like everybody is coming in with the desire to go into industry, but what is it about it that you're passionate about? What is it that you will bring to the table that's different than your candidates? Really think through that and have a real genuine story, because everybody can see through the answers of I want to go into industry because, and you kind of like rehearse an answer. I would spend a lot of time understanding your value story, the why, even if you don't have experience in industry. I know a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to apply because I didn't do any internships in pharma, or I didn't get that experience. You can still totally do it. And your passion, if you're really passionate about it and you've talked to a lot of people and you vocalize that in your interview, and you know that and they can see that they've done that research, then that will shine through and you're going to come off as a strong candidate. I think a lot of people on the flip side of that may have stacked up a lot of internships in industry, but don't have a good reason for going into industry. And you can see right through that. And there have been people where they look at resumes and it's like a bunch of industry experience and they ask them why industry, and they just are flat. So I would say just know your story and your passion and why you want to go into industry.
And to the point of rotations, get as many diverse experiences as you possibly can. Take the rotations that you don't think you want to take, that you think you have absolutely no interest in, or with the hardest preceptor. That would be my best advice to you. Don't go the easy way out.
I also just wanted to, I know we are talking about it in the chat, but just wanted to give some resources for students who are looking for more information on industry and different functional areas, as well as how to obtain a fellowship. So the Pharma Collective on our Instagram and YouTube, we do have some brief introductions on the different types of functional areas. So you can see that on our Instagram. And then we also have another installment series called What's the Function? And we highlight different functional areas and have a key expert talk about those areas. So I know, for instance, we have done medical affairs. We will be having HUOR market access coming up soon, as well as pharmacovigilance. So that's also on our page and on our YouTube channel if you're interested. And then Industry Pharmacist Organization is also, or IPHO, if you're in pharmacy school and you know it by the acronym, that is another great resource to use. I think starting this academic year, they did have a fellowship central to where if you're a paying member, you're able to see different fellowships and their brochures and different opportunities, as well as other functional areas as well. And then of course, we do have coaching programs as well, including R Excellence and PILS. So I just wanted to drop that in there just in case. I know the chat is moving quickly a little bit. And I think we have time for one more question. If there's anyone that had anything that they wanted to ask.
I have a question if there's time. I'm not sure if you can hear me because I'm on the road. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, hi, I'm Shelby. I have a question on finding a mentor that looks like you, if you will. So I understand the value of having a mentor who either looks like you or has a similar background as you, but have you ever experienced a situation in which there was someone in the workplace who it was harder to connect with them, or you felt like they were harder on you because they were from a similar background as you, or they look like you, and it's just difficult to connect? And if so, how did you navigate that?
I think you asked if there were times that where we had difficulties connecting with people who look like us, and what we did. Is that what you said? I didn't hear everything.
Yeah, in a sense where you felt like they were maybe harder on you, for, I don't know, fear of favoritism or whatever else the reason might be.
I mean, I've had individuals who were, I wouldn't say harder on me, but they challenged me, and I appreciated that because it made me more rounded. So I've never really had anyone who was like hard on me. I just, they just they expected me to do well, and that's why, I didn't know at the time, but that's what it was for. It was to prepare me.
I have a juicy one. It was it wasn't, so I would say that they did not look like me. It was a male and he was Indian, so like we obviously didn't look alike, but he had a very similar background to me where I thought he would be a natural advocate. He also got a PharmD MBA at my school, did similar internship opportunities, did similar leadership positions, and I was really excited to talk with him and get his support and get his advocacy, especially since I was applying for a full-time role at that company. And he did not offer that at all. I think he felt threatened. Looking back at that conversation, I was like, what happened? It was kind of caught me off guard because I thought that I would have a friend. I thought that I would have someone to lift me up, and that was not the case. And my best advice to you is don't let that beat you down. Like, don't let that deter you or waver your determination to get to where you need to be, because I could have easily done that. I could have been like, oh my God, I'm not good enough for this role. And this guy who literally has done everything the same as me is saying that I'm not good enough. And I could have totally internalized that. And my challenge to you is just seek out a different supporter, seek out a different advocate, seek out somebody who is willing to help you, because it ended up being a perfect, it ended up working out for the best, because I ended up landing my dream rotational program opportunity at a company that was my first choice. And so he ended up, actually, funny story, he ended up reaching back out to me because he saw the successes that I've had at the company that he now wants to work at. And he wanted to reconnect and say, he was like, oh, I saw that we lost touch, and you're working at Genentech and you're doing this and this. And it was such a feeling of, haha, I told you so, like, way to now reach back out. But yeah, exactly how the tables have turned. So I would say when you're in a situation like that, seek out other supporters and seek out other advocates, because don't let one person block you from your career progression.
Agree with both perspectives. So I've had that situation occur twice. One, it was because she was trying to prepare me for what I was going to face down the line. And the other, I don't think realized that she was doing it, but I respect her more than any other preceptor or mentor that I ever had. And that's because she had a level of excellence that she knew that I could reach, and she was about it. So I really, really appreciate that about her. Now, I hated it when I was going through it, but it ended up, I think, making me a much better pharmacist in the end. So we still keep in touch and everything. To the point that Lily made, and this was an earlier question that I wanted to just tag on to, make sure that you have a board, is what I call it, or like a basketball team, where you have someone that plays a different role, but they can give you advice on different parts of who you are or different parts of something that you're working on. And that can also speak for you in various different rooms that you may not be in. So just be really, really strategic about who you're picking, either for your mentor or your sponsor, sit back and take a look at sort of how they navigate those waters. What other senior leaders are they interacting with as well? Because then your name can get in places that it may not have necessarily done, but just make sure that you're not strictly picking just a homogeneous population. Make sure that you're really getting diverse mentors. And when I say diverse, I mean background and experience, mentors and sponsors as well.
Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it.
Wow. I think we all kind of knew that this conversation was going to be a great talk, but I don't think that we all expected it to be this powerful. I mean, it doesn't matter if you are a woman or not, you got something out of this conversation. And I just genuinely want to say, Lily, Marcia, and Kim, thank you so much for taking out the time to share your experiences and your thoughts on all of these different conversations that we've had. If there are no other questions, I do want to go ahead and respect our panelists' time and just want to say thank you again to everyone for joining. If you don't already follow the Pharma Collective on Instagram, please do so. And on LinkedIn, like we said earlier, that we will be sharing our journeys throughout our API experiences. So please stay tuned to that, as well as having a pharmacovigilance and a HEOR/market access conversation coming up next month. Alrighty, everyone. I hope you guys have a wonderful day or night. Enjoy your Friday and weekend.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Of course.
Bye,
Thank y'all. Thank
everyone.
everybody for coming.
Thank you
Good night,
all again.
everybody.